Hello good people of YouTube and welcome to my hobby channel, and in this short video I wanted to share a simple trick that I use when I'm assembling those multi-part miniatures. If it's plastic miniatures that you're gluing together, then the process is normally straightforward. Just get yourself a good quality plastic glue. I use this Contactor Professional by Revell, which is a poly cement. And it's designed to melt the plastic parts so that when you glue them together, the plastic actually fuses. In case you're wondering, I've got a little milliput and green stuff handle attached to a very thin piece of brass rod. And I tend to use this to keep the applicator nozzle on the Revell contactor free and clear of blockages. The question that I want to answer today, however, is what do I do when I'm gluing small metal parts together, like this Roman dwarf here from Checkpoint Miniatures? What do I do when I'm gluing resin parts together? What do I do when I'm gluing metal parts to plastic parts? And so on. So if you're building a model out of mixed materials, then the logical choice is superglue, but superglue doesn't set or cure or dry immediately, and sometimes if you're trying to manipulate an awkward part like a head and attach that to a neck, you'll find yourself struggling with parts that keep falling off and superglue that's getting all over your fingertips. Now on bigger models you can pin parts, you can drill a hole into either side of the joint and insert a small metal pin so that when you glue them together you've got a strong and stable bond. But sometimes those parts are too small, too fiddly, or you may not have the tools that you need in order to work at such a small size or a fine scale. So I'm going to show you an assembly hack or a shortcut that you can take which will hopefully solve the problem. So before I do that, I just want to give a shout out to Jack Sarge Painting. I'm a big fan of his channel, and he often comments on my videos. And it was in one of his comments that he mentioned that he also uses the same technique that I use. He's an incredibly skilled and accomplished commission painter who hails from down under. And when I'm relaxing and doing a little bit of hobby, I will often watch one of his videos. So yes, a big thank you to Jack Sarge Painting for reminding me about this technique, which then of course prompted me to do this video. So if you haven't already, please check out his channel. I'll leave a link in the description below if I can. I'm demonstrating this technique with a Roman dwarf from Checkpoint Miniatures. Now, I don't know if you can see there, this metal casting here seems to look a little bit white. That's a fine dusting of talcum powder, which is often used as a mold release agent when casting metals. So if you buy miniatures and they feel a bit chalky and they look a bit dusty, it's perfectly normal, and any excess residue that's left on the models will come off quite easily with hot soapy water and a little bit of gentle scrubbing with an old toothbrush or something. The first thing I've done is mix together some green stuff and milliput in a 50-50 ratio, so that's equal parts of milliput and green stuff. This gets me my standard putty mix, the recipe that I use most of the time. Break a tiny little piece of putty off and have that ready, and then I'll take a quick look at how well this dwarf fits into the slot base, and that is a very neat and tidy fit. You can see there's a slight gap there. I know some people, when they base their miniatures, will put a little bit of polyfiller in there. I tend not to use it because if the base gets damaged during gameplay, you end up with these really stark and vivid white marks as the white plaster shows through. So I always use a modelling putty, and that's simply because I'm normally mixing some putty for a different reason. Just putting some super glue on the soles of the feet and the front and the back of the tab. Then I'm going to only use a tiny bit of the putty that I had ready. Roll a sort of sausage shape, place it against one edge of the tab. I'm just gently lowering that tab down into the groove so that I don't squish too much putty out. But that putty is now holding the body of that dwarf Roman in place. Again, I'll push a tiny bead of putty up into the groove there, wipe along either with a finger or a sculpting tool. Do the same on that side there. And then when you look at the top of the base, you can take a damp sculpting tool and just smooth out any little pieces of putty that are protruding or that you're not happy with. So that's using a combination of super glue and putty to secure the miniature to the base. So I'm now going to show you how a little bit of super glue with a tiny bit of putty is a good shortcut or hack to fixing a head. Tiny bit of super glue. I'm going to bring the head into contact with that to transfer some glue onto the underside of the head. So just put the head down for a second, break off a small piece of putty. Now this is probably no bigger than a mustard grain, and I'm just going to delicately pop that, famous last words, onto the neck. It's not in the place that I want it, so I'm going to try and use a sculpting tool just to nudge it. It's flattening it out slightly, which is okay. So there's a tiny bead of putty on there with some super glue on both surfaces, and then I can just come in and push the head down in the position that I want until I'm happy with that fit. Like so. And then I'm just going to go around with the sculpting tool and make sure that I'm okay with the putty. Nothing is squeezed out. You haven't got any lumps and bumps that you don't want. But the super glue on that model is still wet. It hasn't gone off yet. It'll take a few minutes, but hopefully you can see from this demonstration that adding a tiny bit of putty will just help support the parts, keep them together, and now you can put that model to one side and let it dry. If you're doing a whole unit, you can just work through the unit, putting the heads on, and then you can come back and do the weapons and the shields. I want a tiny little droplet of super glue in there. Tiny piece of putty, about the size of a mustard grain. Some people like to paint their miniatures before they put shields on. Nothing wrong with that. It does give you more to paint though. If you put the shield on your miniature before you paint it, then you can use that shield to create areas of shadow that you don't need to paint, and it saves you a little bit of work. So now that shield is being held in place by putty. Again, the super glue is still wet. It hasn't had time to dry, but I haven't got to hold it because the tiny bead of putty that I've put in there is doing that for me. And you can see now as well how much of that dwarf's body is being covered by the shield. The last thing I'm going to do is just fix the hand. If I'm clever about it, I could super glue the pilum or the bottom of the spear to the top of the foot for added support. Another really small piece of putty required. I'll put some super glue on the wrist. Got some super glue there. I'm going to dip the end of that spear as well. Now just leave that to one side so it doesn't stick to my cutting mat. Put the little ball of putty on there. Retrieve the javelin and then push the two parts together. Like so. Hopefully you saw that and I didn't drift off camera, because there's no way I want to do that again. And now I'm just taking a sculpting tool and very gently running it along that line of putty there to create more of an indent. There's a bit more putty on the inside here, and that can be used to help secure the join. You can run that round the wrist underneath, bring it up to the edge of the spear or javelin, and just kind of work it so that it disguises that join. And also when you spread the putty around a little, it will help increase the bond. Looks a bit messy at this stage, but once you get the paint on that, you really won't be able to tell. And that is it. That is one fully assembled Roman Centurion, dwarf Centurion, from Checkpoint Miniatures. As always, thanks very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please smash that like button. Please hit subscribe for more videos like this, and please check out the other videos on my channel. If you'd like to leave a comment, please do, but keep those comments kind and respectful. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.